Are you wondering why house prices haven't crashed yet? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you my 2021 housing market update. I'm going to show you what you need to be watching and how different markets are moving independently. And of course, what we should all be doing. Now, depending on if you want to buy, if you want to sell, or you want to invest. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Mark here. Now today I wanted to dig back into real estate. Now I think this is the probably fourth or fifth video that I've done on real estate since the pandemic broke out. What is it, 7, 8, 9 months ago? But in order to understand the bigger concepts here about the real estate market, first, I want to tell you a true story. All right. So let's see. I'm going to take you back. It was a warm evening, a very warm evening, very calm. The air was cooling down. It was still pretty humid, but the heat of the summer was fading fast. It was actually September 8th, 2017 to be exact. I was deep in Mexico. I was in the state of Oaxaca, and it's almost near the Guatemalan border. Now, I was with the family. We were upstairs in a room on the second floor in a condo. The kids were asleep in the room next over. My wife and I, we were laying on the bed about to fall asleep when all of a sudden, dogs started barking. Dogs were howling all through the neighborhoods. Then all of a sudden, the windows started to rattle so hard, it sounded like they were going to break right out of their frames. The building then started to shake and sway back and forth. It was crazy. Now, coming from California, where we have earthquakes pretty regularly, you would think that I'd be used to that. But this was no ordinary earthquake. In fact, it was the biggest earthquake to hit Mexico in over a century. And it didn't just hit Mexico, it was happening less than 60 miles from where I was actually sitting. Within minutes, members of the group that I was with at the condo complex were running around, came up to the door, banging on the door, and they're like, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. And I'm like, well, hang on, what do you mean? I mean, it's like midnight, I'm a little bit slow. It's like, this is just an earthquake, it's gonna be okay. They said, no. It was an 8.1 earthquake, and it happened in the ocean, 60 miles directly off the beach, from directly in front of where we were staying, right on the beach right there. And so you might know what happens next after an earthquake, especially when an earthquake happens in the ocean. And if you guessed a tsunami, then you would be correct. I instantly remembered the 2004 tsunami that happened in Bali, which took over 230,000 lives. And it happened in just a couple of hours. And that was caused by a 9.1 earthquake happening in the Indian Ocean. And so I remember that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to go. We got the kids up. We scrambled as fast as we could, grabbed a couple of belongings really fast, headed out the door. We didn't know where we were going to go, but we knew that we had to go somewhere. We knew we had to go to higher ground. Now, we were in this little tiny town of Puerto Escondido. We were on a missions trip down there, and I was the only one in our group of 14 people that had a rental car. So we all piled into this rental car. We were like clowns in a circus, jumping into the car, sitting on laps, piled everywhere, and we took off and we drove up to higher ground. We sat there till about 4 in the morning until the tsunami finally came into shore. Luckily for the town, it was just a very small tsunami. It didn't have as much damaging effects. Actually, the earthquake caused way more damage than the tsunami did, but it was definitely a night that my family will never forget. Now, why am I telling you this story when I'm supposed to be talking about real estate? Well, because what we're witnessing in real estate right now is exactly like an earthquake and a tsunami. All right. The pandemic that crashed the economy, it wiped out hundreds of thousands of small businesses. It put 50 million people out of work. That was the earthquake. All right. But after the earthquake, the tsunami starts to build. All right. It builds and builds and builds, and it comes in after. And right now, the tsunami is still building, and it's yet to hit the land. At first, the water sucks out, it builds up all the energy, and then it comes back. And that's in the process that we're in right now. The tsunami hasn't come in to wipe everything away, but I believe that we're going to see the same thing happen in the housing market. So let's take a look at what's happening in the market right now. What we can see actually right now. And really the only thing you have to know to figure out where real estate prices are going. Really, I love to break everything down to its most basic, and we're going to keep going back to that. And that is what drives all prices, which is supply and demand. Okay, that's it at its most basic. So let me explain first. So as soon as the pandemic broke out, what happened is, as soon as the pandemic broke out, we saw more homes that were currently for sale pulled off of the market more than any time in history. All right. Now, that's not a big surprise, of course, with this brand new virus that broke out. Of course, everybody was scared. Nobody wanted strangers coming through their houses. No one wanted to be out shopping for houses. No one wanted to move. So, trying to find housing or any of that, nobody wanted to mess with that. At the same time, new construction stopped all across the country. Nobody was working, so no new houses were hitting the market. At the same time, we had that caused this massive reduction in supply. Okay, so everyone took their homes off the market, new homes stopped being made, and so the supply ground to a halt. But at the same time, the Fed jumped into action to try to help this thing or fix this thing, or whatever they're trying to do, and they lowered the interest rate all the way down at the same time to, of course, what? Get people to borrow money. And so as they did that, they lowered interest rates, making it easier for people to buy homes, and so the demand was low. The supply was low, the demand picked up, and guess what happened? Supply and demand, right? Home prices went up because demand was up while the supply was down. Well, over the last 6 months, we've seen this continue, all right? Home inventory still hasn't picked up, that's the supply, and we still have some of the lowest home inventory in history. You can actually see from this 5-year chart I have up on the screen right now, typically we would see about 6 months of inventory, which is the time that it takes to turn over the inventory. That's the supply. And today it's only about 3 months. All right, that's half the average time, which means there's still not enough supply and there's still too much demand. But is it going to continue? That's the big question. So let's take a look at what the data is showing us. All right. Now, the first thing that you have to understand if you want to understand real estate prices, this one thing, remember this, there is no such thing as the real estate market. Okay. No, the real estate market. Instead, there's thousands of submarkets. They're all broken up by state, by city area, by city, by area, by home type, by price, so many other types of factors. So this means that the whole country doesn't move up and down as one, but rather you have to look at each individual submarket independently. So let me give you an example of that. In New York City, they were ravaged by the pandemic, right? And so people started to flee the big city as fast as they could. And then when they were fleeing the city, it pushed a huge supply of homes onto the market. And guess what happened? While the nationwide home prices are up 9% from last year in Manhattan, home sales are down over 50%. So instead of the 3 months of inventory that's national, in Manhattan, they have over 31 months. So do you see too much supply and not enough demand affected just that specific market, not the whole country? That's what I'm talking about. Now, this market is a leading indicator for what's to come. Now, typically, we see the major markets get hit first, and then the ripple effects of the tsunami start to drag down other markets. So let's examine a couple other things that could affect this delicate supply and demand balance. Now, currently, 16% of FHA homes are 60 days delinquent. There's almost 2 million people that are 90 days delinquent. So that means they're not making their payments, right? And also we have 30% of renters currently not making their rent payments. That's a lot. 16% of FHA are 60 days, 2 million people are 90 days, 30% of renters aren't making their payments. So that's the tide sucking out before that tsunami comes back to shore. And of course, when those people aren't making their rent payments, it puts even more pressure on the homeowners. Now, we also know that mortgage forbearance is running out at the end of March. Okay, that's 12 months from when it first started. Now, forbearance gives people the ability to defer their payments to the end of the loan, but of course, they're still going to have to pay it back. And as I said, there's over 2 million mortgages over 90 days delinquent right now. So basically, if that forbearance runs out, or I should say when the forbearance runs out, there's going to be a whole lot of supply that's going to come back onto the market, back to supply and demand, right? And that's just the residential. What about the commercial markets? All right. Well, commercial markets are even worse. Now, again, there's no commercial market. There's a bunch of different markets. So, for example, some of the open air retail, some of the warehouse space, that stuff's still doing pretty good. But most of the retail, especially malls, especially office buildings, business office buildings, they've been hit very, very hard. Now, remember, the tsunami comes after the earthquake, and we have yet to see if it's going to come to shore. But remember, the tsunami comes after the earthquake, and we haven't yet seen the tsunami come to shore. Now, like I said earlier about New York, first it comes to the major markets, and then it's going to trickle down into the smaller markets after that. So if you are wanting to make moves, then you need to be paying attention, all right? You need to be looking at the mortgage delinquencies. You need to be looking at the mortgage evictions in your specific market, all right, and your submarket. You need to be looking at those property types and look at those two numbers, mortgage delinquencies, mortgage evictions. And as you start to see those numbers start going up, then you're going to see that home sales and then home prices will start going down. So they're going to go like this, all right? Because what? Supply and demand, right? You should know that by now. Now, another factor that you have to be paying attention to is what I've been calling the Great Migration, all right? Now, this Great Migration is already taking place. Just like I gave the example in New York, people are fleeing cities like Manhattan, and they're going to more rural places. Now that Americans can basically work from anywhere, we've seen most of the big companies said that people can just work from home indefinitely. Even the colleges and universities are allowing people to attend remotely as well. And since people can basically be working and attending school from anywhere, then they're going to be looking to leave the large urban centers, and they're looking for smaller, less dense cities, of course, also with cheap housing. Now, remote work has opened up a whole new world of possibilities when it comes to buying a home. And a good example of how these smaller submarkets work is, let's just look at just New York, okay? So forget the whole market, the whole country. Let's just look at New York. So while New York City is crashing, Buffalo, New York, seeing a huge net inflow. As a matter of fact, it saw an increase of 107% gain. Now, many residents of the expensive cities like New York, Los Angeles, big cities like that, San Francisco, who can't afford to rent and to save for a home at the same time, they're leaving, right? And they're looking to buy homes in much more affordable places like Louisville or Little Rock. Now, per Redfin, a big real estate website, Redfin's top 10 destinations include El Paso, Texas, Burlington, Vermont, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Tulsa even has a program. It's called Tulsa Remote, and they're actually paying people to move to the city and work remotely. So if you can now work remotely, you're looking for a cheap place to live, Tulsa will pay you to move there and work. Now, most of the destination cities have relatively low housing costs compared to the larger metropolitan areas that people are leaving. So if you're looking at the larger state picture, Florida appears to be the biggest recipient of people fleeing New York. I know if you're in Florida, you don't want me to say that, but that is what the data is showing us. Everybody's fleeing the expensive areas of the Northeast and heading down to Florida. Nearly twice as many Redfin searches as last year, or 22,000 more people look to move into Florida than out in the third quarter. Now, that's the highest net inflow since Redfin began tracking migration data 3 years ago. We got Florida, we got Texas, we got Tennessee, we got North Carolina, and Nevada all saw the biggest net inflows of people increasing in the state since last year. So the final question that we want to ask now is, should you buy or should you sell right now? Right? A lot of people are asking me that question. So first, let's focus on should you buy, all right? And should you buy, I'll say that it depends. Of course, I'm going to say that, right? It depends. Why are you buying, all right? Are you buying for your own personal home? Are you buying for your own personal home that you're going to live in for a long time? Or are you buying it as an investment property? Now, if you're buying for your own personal home and you find the home that you love, that you want to live in, let's say for the next 10 years, and let's say that you have good enough credit to qualify for the 3%, or less mortgages that you can get right now, then I'd say that you might want to take it. I mean, with that low of interest rate, anything below 3%, and the current rate of inflation right now, it's pretty much going to pay the house off for you. And it's basically going to be free money, assuming, of course, that you can maintain the payment amount. And again, you're going to stay there for at least 10 years. However, if you're looking for an investment property, then it gets a little bit trickier. There's a little bit more criteria. So it depends on what type of investment you're looking for. If you're looking to, buy it and then flip it for more money in the near future, I'd say now is probably not the best time to do that because the market is probably ready for a drop, if not March of next year, if not sooner. All right. However, if you're buying it for cash flow, all right? And you just want to use it as like a rental property. And you can qualify for these low interest rates. And let's say that you're happy with the area. You think that the area is going to sustain long-term growth. You know, if you're in one of those states I mentioned, North Carolina, Florida, etc. So if you're in one of those areas and the cash flow that it's projected to provide is good, you're happy with the cash flow. Like I said, it's an area that you believe has that long-term demand, then you might just want to go ahead, right? If it doesn't meet that criteria, if you don't like the cash flow, if you don't think it's in an area that has good demand, then you probably want to hold off, all right? But remember, you need to be looking at these migration patterns and determine the long-term demand of the area, because this is going to cause, like I said, some markets to rise while other markets are falling. It's not just one giant real estate market. It's not the market. Each market, each home type, each property type, each price point is going to be moving independently. All right, so now you know what's happening. You know what to expect in the short and the medium term. You know what things you need to be watching. You understand the difference in the markets and the submarkets. So what do you think? Are you planning on buying, or are you just going to hold off for right now? Leave me a comment and let me know. Now, if you have a question, I'd like for you to tag me in a tweet on Twitter, and I will reply. I can't get to all the comments on the thread here because they start piling up too fast, but hit me up on Twitter and I will give you an answer. On my Twitter, I am at #1 Mark Moss. On Twitter, at #1 Mark Moss. And that's what I got. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't like the video, I don't know why, but give me a thumbs down either way. But of course, leave me a comment and let me know so I can reply to you. And that's what I got for you today. All right, to your success. I'm out. Now, before you leave, you're seeing a couple other videos right here up on the screen. So if you want to see more videos from me, go ahead and watch one of these videos right here, and I'll see you on the next one.